I'm a 25-year-old male. I live in Utah, and I'm curious if any of you have seen anything like this before. I'm pretty sure I saw a Wendigo or a skinwalker. I know it sounds strange or crazy. I don't really believe in those things, and I'm a regular skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. But still, help me explain this. Let me set the stage. This happened to me when I was 17 and in high school living with my parents. My house at the time was in a very small town. The backyard faced open, empty fields and mountains for miles before you reached another civilization at all. My best friend happened to live next door and shared this field as our backyard in a way. I have to explain that his house was built on a different street that ended in the field with a small cul-de-sac. I think there were supposed to be more houses built down this street to expand the town, but they clearly never got around to it. So his driveway was basically in this cul-de-sac, even though no other houses were built there. This matters for later in the story. I used to stay the night at my friend's house a lot in high school because I didn't have the best relationship with my parents. Every once in a while, we would wake up to hear dragging and weird gurgling sounds from the back porch. His room was a basement room with a window well to the back porch. It would happen maybe a few times a month, but whenever we would get the courage to check, nothing would ever be there. And this happened for years. One night haunts my friend and I to this day. We were getting ready to move and would stay up all night playing games and watching movies. We decided to go on a music drive just to vibe. So he hopped into his truck with high beams and swung out of the driveway, turning them on toward the field to use it as a roundabout. And that's when the light illuminated this thing. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. It was naked on all fours, abnormally large, particularly in its limbs that seemed to fold under itself in an unnatural way. Its pale skin clung to it like it had been stretched onto it. But the part that still sends a shiver down my spine was its face. Its jaw hung open to this gaping black maw like a snake unhinged to eat. Its black eyes glistened in the light as it looked at us. But just as it turned to see us, it quickly scurried backwards, almost like it was on rewind, into the brush of the field. My friend and I were as pale as ghosts. We both looked at each other like, "Did you see that?" We were shaken. Let's just say we tried to have a good rest of the night, but we couldn't believe what we saw. We ended up just sitting there in his basement with guns ready and waiting to hear the gurgling and the dragging again, but we never did. I don't live in that town anymore. There are times that I visit there though. The empty field still feels like there's something waiting there. And even though I can't see it, I'm convinced whatever it is still out there. I never expected to move into a 120-year-old log cabin in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. But life doesn't always wait for you to feel ready. My fiance, our baby, and I ended up there about a month ago because of some messy family issues. And my aunt offered her place, and as we didn't have many options, we obliged. So we packed everything we owned into the car and suddenly found ourselves living in a house that looked like it belonged on an antique postcard. The cabin was built in 1903, or at least that's what my aunt said. The land itself is surrounded by thick Missouri woods that swallow the sound in that eerie way only forests in the middle of nowhere seem to accomplish. For the first few weeks, everything felt fine. I mean, it was a bit old, a little drafty, but fine. My uncle would talk about strange things happening here and there over the years, voices in the woods, shadows moving where nothing should be, and knocks on the door in the dead of night. He'd always laugh about it like it was a really funny story. I wasn't sure if he was trying to freak us out or just kind of make us prepared for what could be there. I mean, at first I laughed it off. My fiance did too. We both chalked it up to rural folklore. But then things started happening. It began one Monday morning just before sunrise. My uncle is a truck driver, so he leaves early in the week and usually doesn't come home till Friday night. He called my aunt right after he pulled out of the driveway. You won't believe what I just saw. There was a wolf by the fence line. I swear on my life, it was huge. My aunt repeated it to me and my fiancé, and we both gave her a look. A big wolf wasn't unheard of. But of course, that's when we started seeing it. Most mornings, Right as the sky was barely turning blue, the wolf appeared down by the edge of the yard. Huge. Too big. Its silhouette didn't look right. It stayed outside the tree line and then drifted closer, pacing like it owned the place. And at night, it howled long and low. It actually woke the baby up a few times. Here's the part that really threw us. We have dogs here. They bark at anything that moves. They didn't care. They never barked, growled, or even perked their ears when we heard the wolf howl nearby. They acted like nothing was there. And that's when my stomach dropped. Animals notice things before humans, and they react. They don't ignore predators. But if the dogs didn't seem to care, why? Is it because they were afraid of it, or maybe because it wasn't a wolf at all? I tried to stay rational. Perhaps the wolf was sick. Maybe the dogs knew it wasn't a threat. Maybe I was overthinking it. But at night, when I was lying in bed listening to the floor creak and the wind scrape against the cabin walls, those explanations fell short. Every few nights there would be knocking on the doors. Just 2 slow taps spaced out like someone testing to see if we'd answer. Other nights it could be louder and more confident. I'd stand in the hallway holding the baby monitor, frozen, staring at the shadows near the back door, waiting for the shape to move. Then there were the sounds. Singing is the closest word I can use for it, but it doesn't really describe it. It wasn't like a human voice. It was more like a humming with a strange rhythm, almost patterned, like someone outside was trying to remember an old song but couldn't quite get the melody right. The sounds drifted around the house, sometimes circling it. I'd be in the kitchen at night and hear it faintly near the back window. Another night it came from the woods, closer than it should have been. I kept brushing it off to keep from scaring myself. The cabin is isolated. Sounds scary. Old houses make noises. The woods have animals. All the usual excuses. But the thing is, the excuses started to feel weaker every time the wolf showed up. For weeks, one specific thought kept gnawing at the back of my mind, and I kept trying to push it away because it felt ridiculous and dramatic. But it just wouldn't leave the forefront of my brain. Skinwalkers. I grew up hearing stories about them from family. I'm 50% Native American, and while I don't pretend to know every detail of the folklore or speak for any tribe, the stories were always treated with respect and never something one would joke about. I didn't want to make that connection. I didn't want to even think of the word. But once it crossed my mind, it stayed there, permeating everything. Especially when I started to do research, reading other encounters and realizing how many details lined up so accurately. The wolf being huge, the dogs acting like nothing was wrong, the knocking on the doors, the singing in the woods. The lingering feeling that we weren't alone out there, it made the entire month feel worse. The woods felt different at night too, still in a suffocating way, like something was just sitting behind the tree line watching the house. Right now, as I'm sharing this, I keep hearing things outside. Little noises, crunching and shifting and movement. A low sound that could be the wind, but I doubt it. And every time I pause to listen, it'll stop for a while until it starts again. The rational part of my brain is fighting the fear hard. Big wolves exist. Old houses make noises. But there are some things that I can't explain away. And the rest of me remembers the look on my uncle's face when he talked about what he saw. I don't know what's happening out on this land. All I know is I can't wait to be free of it. My grandparents owned about 80 acres of land roughly 20 miles east of Snowflake, Arizona. Why my grandparents chose that land, I will never know. Maybe it was cheap in the early 80s. Maybe they liked the isolation. Either way, they left San Manuel after my grandfather retired from the mine and settled into that place. The nearest neighbors were my aunt and uncle about a mile away, and the next closest was a rancher called Stoddard. I'd never heard the first name, just Stoddard. He lived 4 miles away, right at the base of one of the biggest bluffs. And my grandparents hated him. He was a rancher who acted like the entire desert belonged to him. If his cattle wandered onto your land, he'd shrug like it was your fault. More than once, my grandfather caught him cutting the barbed wire fence so his cows could graze on our property. The man had that entitled sun-cracked arrogance only certain ranchers seem to cultivate. The land out there is littered with Anasazi ruins, cliff dwellings, old pueblos, pottery shards. Most of it was destroyed long before any archaeologist ever had a chance, bulldozed by ranchers with backhoes hoping to find pots to sell. My family always figured Stoddard was one of them. One day, after losing a calf, Stoddard was out near the bluffs. That's when he found it. A boulder the size of a pickup leaning oddly against the face of the sandstone, sealing up a narrow opening. His curiosity won. He brought his backhoe, tore the sandstone slab away, and uncovered a cave. But it wasn't just any cave. It was an Anasazi burial chamber. I'm sure Stoddard saw nothing but dollar signs when he went inside, took whatever caught his eye, pottery, artifacts, maybe even bones, and sold what he could. That's when it began to rot. First, he lost $500,000 in a stock market crash, which was only the start. His cattle developed some sort of disease that swept through the herd like fire through grass. Dead animals everywhere. Financial ruin came quickly. Then his wife got sick, something really rare, something that no one around here had ever heard of, and died within months. Not long after that, Stoddard got thrown off his horse and shattered his spine and never walked again. Bear in mind, all of this happened within just a few years. He became convinced he was cursed and told anyone who would listen that disturbing the burial cave had ruined his life. Most people laughed him off, said he was just bitter, crazy, and unlucky. But Stoddard took whatever artifacts he still had, hauled himself back to that cave, and returned everything, and used the backhoe to seal the entrance boulder back into place. Then one night, he abandoned his ranch entirely. House full of furniture, clothes still in the closet, dishes still in the sink. He simply left. A few years later, a man from California bought the property, fixed up the old ranch house, and listed it for rent. Around the time, my aunt was pregnant with her first child and wanted to move closer to my grandparents, and she and her husband rented Stoddard's old place. It looked innocent enough in the daylight, a little run down but cozy. Out there at night, though, everything felt wrong. And for the first week or so, nothing happened. Then the noises started. My aunt said she'd hear faint chanting late at night, drifting across the property like wind, dragging voices along the edge. Sometimes there were drums, muted but steady, and she tried to explain it away. Maybe that hippie woman who lived on the bluff was doing spirit rituals. Maybe her husband working nights was making her jumpy. And maybe pregnancy hormones were tricking her. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched constantly. It got bad enough she started having nightmares every single night. She finally told my grandfather, who loaned her his dog, a big trained work mix. She drove him out to the ranch, and the second she opened the truck door, the dog's hackles shot up. He growled low and deep, refusing to step on the ground, and she had to physically drag him into the house. He didn't stop staring at the front door all night, and the chanting grew louder. In the morning, she found bare human footprints circling the house, adult-sized. Things only escalated. Night after night, the dogs barked at walls, drums in the distance, and chanting drifting through windows, more bare footprints. My aunt barely slept. Finally, losing her grip, she asked my grandmother to spend the night. My grandma was a deeply religious woman, gentle and solid as a rock. She came over that afternoon, cooked dinner, helped clean up, and tried to create a sense of peace. Afterward, while my aunt napped, Grandma went for a short walk at the base of the bluff. Later, she said she felt something watching her. Not like an animal, but something intelligent and hateful. She didn't dare tell my aunt, though. When the sun dipped behind the bluff, they decided to leave for my grandparents' place. They packed up, loaded the dog, and climbed in the truck. My grandma put the key in the ignition, and it didn't even click. They tried again. The truck was dead. Grandpa wasn't home when they called, so they had no way to leave, and the night swallowed the desert whole. Then the chanting started again. The dogs began to growl, and something howled outside. Not a coyote, not anything either woman had heard, but something big moved just beyond the reach of the porch light. pacing, circling, testing. My grandma prayed nonstop. My aunt cried quietly. Both of them flinched when something thumped hard against the wall. Finally, my grandmother's frantic calls reached my grandfather. "Elvin," she whispered into the phone, "something's outside the house. You need to come." They waited for what felt like 4 hours until headlights finally crested the hill. Before my grandfather even reached the house, something sprinted across the dirt road in front of his truck. His headlights caught it enough to reflect huge red eyes gleaming. Grandpa slammed the brakes, jumped out, and screamed at them to get into the truck. He fired 2 shots into the darkness, then tore out of there, speeding down the dirt road. My aunt made the mistake of looking back. She saw those same red eyes watching from the edge of the headlights. The next morning, my grandfather and my uncle returned to the house. They found bare footprints everywhere, not just human ones. Massive coyote tracks circled the home too. My aunt never went back. My grandmother said for years afterward she saw those same red eyes lurking at the edge of her property at night. Other families tried living in Stoddard's old place, and none lasted more than a few months. That whole area felt off. After learning more from Native American friends, I'm convinced my family stumbled into something sacred and dangerous. Skinwalkers are known to haunt burial grounds, to guard ruins, and curse those who disturb the dead. Whatever Stoddard awakened that night when he left the cave, I don't think it ever went back to sleep. When most people think about a haunted place, they imagine a house or abandoned building. But I believe whole areas can be hotspots for paranormal activity. For me, it would be the land lying east of Snowflake, Arizona, and west of Concho, along the old Concho Highway. The landscape is that of red rock, sandstone ridges, and red sand. Ancient Anasazi ruins are numerous among the bluffs, echoes of a time when the land wasn't so arid and dry. Gnarled, twisted cedars dot the land along with large, dry washes where sparse groves of cottonwood grow. My grandparents owned 80 acres of land about 20 miles east of Snowflake. The locals in Snowflake refer to this area as Out East. My grandparents' mobile home sat on the top of a slow-rising hill about a mile south. At the bottom of the hill, my aunt and uncle had built a 3-level home where they lived with their 2 sons and 2 daughters. The house was a neat layout. From the front, it only looked 2 stories, but at the back, due to the slope of the hill, the basement was visible. A large wooden deck surrounded the middle section of the home. The home faced the west, and to the east, the hill slowly descended into a wash. From the back deck, there were views of the Zuni Holy Mountain and Little Colorado River Valley near St. John's. This story is the account of the terrifying experience my older cousin Sam endured in the summer of '91. It was late June, and Sam was 17. While most people his age were enjoying their summer vacation, Sam wasn't. He had attended a huge graduation party and gotten drunk as a skunk. Unfortunately for him, the sheriff's department had also attended the party, and he had received an underage consumption ticket, probation, and a severe tongue lashing and a summer grounding. His mother even took the keys to his pickup he had worked all last summer to buy. They were stuck in the middle of the boonies. He had kept pretty busy though, helping our grandparents who lived up the hill. After coming home in the late afternoon, he noticed that the neighbor Jeff from about 5 miles to the west had stopped to visit with his dad, Bill. Jeff was one of those hippie guys. He was cool and all, but everyone suspected he probably partook in a little too much LSD in the 70s. Jeff had a place on the top of the bluff, which ran adjacent to Stoddard's house. Bill and Jeff were on the porch chatting when Sam walked up. He said hi to Jeff, and Jeff asked him if Sam would want to help him with a project on his property. He said he'd pay him a couple of $100 for a week or two's worth of work, and Sam agreed. Some party money for when his parents left town next week for their trip to Nebraska with our grandparents, he thought. The next morning, Bill gave Sam his keys back so that he could drive over to Jeff's place. When he arrived, Jeff was loading up shovels and equipment in his truck. Sam hadn't asked what they were going to be doing, but assumed after seeing the shovels, they were probably going to be replacing fence posts. Jeff told him to hop in the truck, and they headed north along the very top of the bluff on a very visible 2-track dirt road. The top of the bluff had a very good view of the surrounding area. You could see the outskirts of Snowflake and the big dry wash dotted with cottonwood to the west, the White Mountains dominating the horizon to the south, and to the north mesas near Holbrook were visible as well. To the east was a little valley along a smaller wash. He could just make out the roof of Stoddard's house. The thought sent a shiver down his spine and gave him goosebumps. He pushed the story of what happened there to the back of his mind. They went around a small sandstone alcove, and Jeff stopped the truck. In front of them was a large ruin. Sam had grown up out east and had seen many Anasazi ruins. It looked like a large pile of loose sandstone, but a closer look revealed pottery shards everywhere. Like almost all of the ruins, this one had large holes where someone had used a backhoe to find pots at some time. And Sam got an uneasy feeling. Jeff must have seen his face because Sam said he started explaining that his project was to excavate the ruin. He had such a grand plan. He was going to excavate the ruin and open a museum on his property with what he'd found. He'd charge people like $5 to come and check it out. Sam argued that wasn't digging in the ruins illegal. Jeff told him, not if you own the property it sat on, which honestly made Sam feel even more uncomfortable. What about angering spirits? Jeff laughed. You mean Stoddard's place? Sam nodded. Don't get me wrong, Sam. Your aunt and grandma are nice, honest people, but I don't think it was Indian spirits. I think they heard rumors in town about what happened to Stoddard, and they freaked themselves out. Besides, this isn't a burial ground. There are no bodies here, Sam says. Now he should have listened to that feeling telling him to leave. But money was money, and he brushed it off and started shoveling. Around noon, Jeff headed over to his house to make lunch while Sam stayed at the ruin. He didn't really think much about it at the time, but he noticed it was extremely quiet around the ruin. There were no signs or sounds, not even cicadas, which were very frequent around this time of year. He said on the wind he swore he could hear a faint voice, but chalked it up to being freaked out by Stoddard's place being only a few miles away. When Jeff returned with their sandwiches, he also brought a camera so they could document their progress and put pictures in the museum. Jeff had Sam take pictures of him in the room they had cleared out and with these items. So they worked for a week. They weren't making much progress. They hadn't found a lot, a small pot, some beads, and half a tattoo. Sam was happy to have a day off. All during the week, he had fought the feeling that something bad was going to happen. He was glad to get away from the ruin for a while. He dreamed one night that his bed had been shaking. After a pretty uneventful weekend, Sam returned to Jeff's house Monday morning. To his surprise, there was a backhoe parked in his driveway. Another neighbor had loaned it to Jeff. Jeff was excited because now he could make more significant progress. They made a lot of progress. They uncovered 3 to 4 rooms, found some more artifacts. Tuesday and Wednesday go by the same. More rooms, more artifacts, all the while snapping pictures. And after filling 4 rolls of film, Jeff takes them into town so they can be developed. This was way before camera phones and digital cameras, where it took about 10 days for your pictures to be developed. It was now Thursday. They had come across a pretty large room in the pueblo. In the middle was a large block of sandstone. This piqued Jeff's curiosity. The rest of the sandstone they had come across was small. Using the backhoe, he moved the sandstone to the side. There was a black hole beneath. Something about that black hole made Sam's stomach knot. Jeff was extremely excited. He looked into the hole but was unable to make anything out. He grabbed a flashlight and shined it into the hole. "It's another room," Jeff exclaimed. Sam, for some reason, didn't want to look. Something about that opening made his skin crawl. Jeff told Sam to run and grab a ladder. He did, hoping Jeff wasn't going to ask him to go down there. Thunder rolled in the distance as he headed back up to the ruin. Monsoon clouds were building to the south, and the wind had picked up. Jeff put the ladder down into the opening, and Sam asked him if it was safe. Jeff figured since the room had been filled with dirt and giant slabs of sandstone for nearly 1,000 years, he didn't reckon the roof was going to collapse. Now Jeff descended the ladder with a flashlight. "Holy hell!" he exclaimed. He called to Sam, who slowly made his way over. "Bring the camera and come down." Sam felt terror grip him. He didn't want to go down there, but he also didn't want Jeff to think that he was chicken. He grabbed the camera and descended into the black pit. At first, it was so dark he couldn't see anything. He saw the beam of Jeff's flashlight shining on a large corrugated pot. Even with the sunlight coming down, the opening didn't seem to penetrate the darkness. Finally, it dawned upon Sam that the walls and floors were black. The air was stale and smelled strongly of soot. Jeff was excitedly moving around the room to see the treasures it held. A long roll of thunder boomed in the distance. "Start taking pictures," Jeff exclaimed, annoyed that Sam was just standing there. "And make sure the flash is on." Sam began to snap photos. The flash illuminated the room briefly. About the third photo, Sam caught a glimpse of something that made him jump. A human skull. Heart pounding in his chest, he squealed out, "Jeff, there's a skull!" Jeff was busy looking here and there and didn't hear him. He snapped another picture just to be sure, and then he said louder, "Jeff, there's a skull." "What?" "Oh yeah, there's a skull. There's a few of them down here. Looks like there was a fire in this room," he said. He kicked one across the room towards Sam, and Sam jumped. "What the hell, man?" Sam said, his fear turning to anger. "Dude, this isn't right. You shouldn't be messing with bodies. Don't we need to call the cops or something?" Jeff laughed. "The cops? And tell them what, we found a bunch of 1,000-year-old dead Indians?" Sam was really pissed now. "Listen, Jeff, if you want to mess around with this stuff, be my guest, but I'm done. There's something bad about this place and I want to go. You're scared of a bunch of bones. Whatever, man. I'm not paying your ass to be a crybaby." Sam tossed Jeff's camera to the ground and climbed up the ladder, and Jeff started cussing at the broken camera. But Sam didn't care. He started walking back to Jeff's house where his truck was parked. The wind was blowing pretty hard now. Black clouds covered the sun. Sam now saw flashes of light along with thunder. When he arrived home, he remembered that my aunt and uncle had left along with his sister on their trip to Nebraska. His older brother, Zach, had also gone to work at Pizza Hut for the evening, and he was tired. He lay down on the couch and fell asleep, trying not to think about the black room full of bones. A loud crack of thunder shook the house and jolted Sam awake. The house was dark. He fumbled his way to find the light switch and flipped it, but there was nothing. A flash of lightning illuminated the room. Damn! Storm must have kicked the power out. The wind was howling outside, and he fumbled around in the closet until he found the lantern and lit it. He still felt extremely creeped out. So he went up to his bedroom where he had a joint. He figured he'd smoke it. It would help with his nerves. His bedroom faced the driveway, and he opened the window to let some light in to find his joint. A flash of lightning, and that's when he saw something dart across the driveway. His heart skipped a beat. He heard his dog start barking. He put down the joint and closed the window. He felt the terror gnawing at his guts. What the hell was that? He goes downstairs as a precaution and locks the front sliding door, and he hears heavy footsteps running across the porch. And now he goes into full panic mode, realizing the side door is unlocked. He bolts across the living room and trips over a chair. The dogs are freaking out, growling and barking, and he catches a glimpse of something run by the living room window, illuminated by the flash of lightning. He gets to the door, fumbling at the lock. Whatever is outside has a hold of the knob. It starts to turn. He slams the deadbolt locked, the basement sliding glass door. He bolts downstairs. He makes it to the door, finding it already locked, which is a relief. And then another flash of lightning. In it, he sees the silhouette of what he thinks is a man covered in fur, maybe. Red eyes shining from the darkness where his face should be, standing at the edge of his yard. It's very tall. Looking into those red shining eyes for that moment, his breath caught in his throat. Panic whirled up in him. Scrabbling, he falls backwards, knocking his head on a table, crying. He gets up to his feet and bolts upstairs to find the phone. All he can think of is to dial 911. His heart is hammering in his brain. He picks up the phone. Nothing. A large thud coming from the roof shakes him from his despair. The thing is on the roof. Gun. First thing that comes to mind. He bolts to his parents' bedroom where they keep a shotgun in the closet. The dogs bound in after him, and that's when it starts pouring with rain. He can still hear footsteps on the roof. He locks the door behind him, going into the closet. The dogs follow him in. He finds the shotgun, his hands shaking like crazy as he loads it. The dogs are quiet. He can't hear anything coming from the roof anymore. Where the hell is it? In the house? He sits in the closet and waits. The dogs huddle around him. What seemed like hours pass, and nothing but the distant boom of thunder as the storm marches on. He begins to calm down, still in shock. At this point, the storm has rolled to the north. Suddenly, he hears the doorknob rattling. Bang, bang, bang. Beating on the door. Boom. The shotgun goes off, blowing a hole in the closet ceiling, and someone screams, "Don't shoot!" He hears his brother Zach scream. Tears run down Sam's face. He drops the gun and runs to the door, unlocking it, almost knocking his brother over. "What the hell, man? Why are you shooting at me?" But Sam is in hysterics. The story of what had happened earlier in the day and this evening spews out of him, and Zach listens without a word. At the end, Zach only asks, "Okay, Sam, what did you smoke?" "Nothing, bro. I'm not high." And Zach laughs. "Okay, but Mom is going to be pissed. Not only because you blew a hole in their closet, but also all the mud you brought in, bro. You better get that cleaned up." "Mud? What mud? And how did Zach get in?" "The house was locked." He asked Zach, and Zach tells him the sliding glass door was wide open. The electricity had come back at some point while he was in the closet. True to what Zach said, there were red mud bare footprints all around the house, and it wasn't him. He showed Zach his shoes, bare feet, and that the prints were way larger than his. "I bet it was Jeff," Zach concluded. "He probably came over to mess with you because he's pissed you quit and busted his camera. He knew you were freaked out, so he figured he'd mess with your head." Sam isn't sure, but it makes him feel better. "Yeah," he tells himself, "Jeff, that asshat. I must not have got the latch on the sliding glass door closed." The noise on the roof must have been the wind blowing shingles off the roof. It all began to make sense. He and Zach drink a few beers that their dad had left in the fridge. They clean the mud to the best of their ability, and after getting buzzed, they decide they're going to go over in the morning to confront Jeff. Zach says he needs to pay Sam extra since now they need to rent a carpet shampooer to clean the mess Jeff made. They decide to go into town, and one of their friends is throwing a party. I don't think either one of them wanted to stay out there. The party is one that's out in the boonies with a big bonfire. There are 20 teens there. Sam is having a hard time enjoying the party. He keeps feeling like something is watching over him. The beer isn't tasting as good, and he isn't really socializing with his friends. I ask him what's wrong, but he just says he's tired. The full moon is rising to the east, casting its eerie light on the sandstone bluff and cedars. Sam gazes past the firelight and catches a glimpse of something moving just out of reach of the firelight. It moves behind a bush. Must be someone peeing, he thinks to himself. But his gut is disagreeing with him. Suddenly, a strange, throaty howl pierces the night. Sam jumps. He looks around, but no one else seems to have heard anything. They continue laughing and talking. He now turns to see the large figure of a man standing just outside the firelight. He is paralyzed with fear. The man's face is hidden in shadow, but Sam can feel his eyes piercing him. He closes his eyes and starts whispering a prayer under his breath. When he has the courage to open them, the man is gone. He tells Zach he's going home. Zach decides to stay. Sam doesn't really want to go home. He also doesn't want to go back to the party. Mind racing, he heads east down the old Concho highway. Surely, he thinks to himself, he's just freaking himself out. Jeff came over and scared him. And that person at the party was probably just someone who was out peeing. It all makes sense. He notices something running across the highway. It's around 2:30 a.m., so the highway is quite deserted. He slows down, thinking it must have been a deer. And then there's a crash. Something hits the back of the truck, jerking it forward. He slams on the brakes, looking in the rearview mirror. He catches a glimpse of shining eyes. And at this moment, he's in full panic mode. He stomps on the gas, sheer terror engulfing him, too afraid to look back. He sees something out of the corner of his eye. He turns to look and sees a man running next to the truck. He looks down at his speed. He looks again, and now the coyote-type creature is looking at him, At first, its face is shrouded in darkness. Then, he said it transformed before his eyes. The only way he could describe it was that of a demon, large red eyes, a twisted smile, and showing long, sharp teeth. It threw back its head and laughed. It took a long, clawed hand and scratched along the truck as it sped past and vanished into the dark. So, this is what I remember. We lived about 2 hours away from Snowflake. I'm 7 years old in my bed. Around 3:30 in the morning, my family is awakened to someone pounding on the door. Of course, this wakes everyone up as us kids watch Dad open the door and see cousin Sam arrive, who's as white as a sheet, shaking and crying. My parents are pretty startled trying to figure out what's going on, and he starts babbling about demons chasing him, and my mom sends us back to bed. The next day, my dad calls a Navajo friend, and they take him to someone near Sanders to see a medicine man. After they return, Sam stays with us until his parents return from Nebraska. When he finally does go home, he never sees anything again. Years later, when I was older, we became closer, and I asked him what happened that night when he showed up at our house, and he reluctantly told me. I later asked my parents about it, and they confirmed it was the same story he had told them, minus one final part. So the morning that Sam showed up at our house, Zach, his older brother, went out to Jeff's house to collect Sam's money. When he got there, Jeff wasn't there. The door to the house was wide open. The inside was trashed, furniture overturned and broken. Jeff ended up being gone for about 6 months. Everyone wondered where he'd gone to. No one really knew any of his family, just that they were from the Midwest. At one point, my grandma filed a missing persons report with the sheriff's office, but later the sheriff informed her that Jeff was back east. When he does finally return, he is gaunt-looking and looks like he's aged 20 years in the last 6 months. Everyone wondered if it was drugs. Fast forward 5 or 6 years. My grandparents invite Jeff to Thanksgiving at their home. Sam had graduated and long since moved away, but he's up for Thanksgiving. Jeff asks Sam to come to his truck because there's something he wants to show him, and after 6 years, Sam agrees. Jeff hands him a stack of photos. They were the very pictures that he had taken while excavating the ruin. Sam flips through them, not really wanting to think about what happened back then. In the last few years, he had convinced himself it was a bunch of coincidences, and he freaked himself out over them. Jeff unhappily tells Sam to look at the pictures closer, and he does. At first, he doesn't notice anything, but then he notices in the shadows on the pictures, there are figures, small, twisted, and evil, with the same face as the demon that had chased him. Jeff apologized to Sam, but he said he had to make sure he wasn't crazy. And he tells Sam that in the 6 months he was gone, he was hunted by this thing that followed him all the way to Oklahoma. Finally, he sought out the help of a medicine man. He returned the artifacts back and filled the ruin in. Sam said he didn't know what happened to the pictures, and he didn't want to know. I'd like to share my experience on what was easily the most terrifying moment of my life and, in my opinion, contact with something undoubtedly vengeful.